Hey, I'm Blake Smith.
And I'm Matt King.
And we are the Video Island Podcast.
That's right. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about live action video versus motion graphics animation video, and perhaps even where the two can come together.
So in today's episode, we're going to be talking about live action video versus motion graphic video. They both, have their purposes. They both have their pros and their cons.
Yes.
As we both know, one of us excels more than the other in each of these. I, love After Effects and doing the motion graphics. Sure. You love getting your hands on the camera and working with the lights and, making people look all purty on camera.
I feel like that's how we complement each other so well.
We're the yin and the yang.
That's right.
And so I guess basically what we want to dive into is just pretty much the situations where, live action video would prevail over motion graphic and vice versa. Mm-hmm. So let's just dive into it. And I guess for starters, let's kind of just talk about the pros of using live action in regards to creating video in a business use case.
Sure, yeah. So some of the pros definitely of gearing your video creation towards a live action setting, so having real people is, well, that right there is that you're gonna have real people on camera. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking to build some brand identity all around your people and not just a logo and a product, it's a great opportunity to kind of highlight the individuals working at your company. Mm-hmm. Particularly when it comes to salespeople, it's particularly effective because when they're doing outreach, your sales team is doing outreach, they can create videos on the fly pretty quickly once you start to get used to it more and more. And in your outreach, you're actually able to kind of, put your best foot forward, not just by like having text in an email, but mm-hmm. showing off who you are and your personality, flash a nice smile in there too is always good. Maybe tell a couple jokes. But people are gonna, I think, identify more with a person versus text sometimes. And if you have a winning personality, it's like, why not show that off, right? So I think that's one major important factor when it comes to using live action. Sometimes when it comes to instructional videos as well, and that can kind of go both ways between motion graphics and live action. Depending on what, say, your product may be, it might be a little bit easier to show off features of a product by having somebody interact with said product in live video. Other products or maybe software is probably better shown using motion graphics, so you can kind of scale up and zoom in and get really fine features of a piece of software where there's lots to look at on a screen, so you can kind of hone in on those fine details as you go along. Those are a couple big points. Same thing kind of goes for testimonials too. If you're recording testimonials, obviously you want to be able to have your customers who are a champion of your product be on camera so you can kind of see their genuine reaction, because people are going to identify more with an individual and find trust in that individual, right? Mm-hmm. So you're able to kind of have more of a relationship with a person versus just text or colors and graphics at times, right? So that's kind of some pretty major strong points for why live action is a great tool.
Yeah, and I completely agree, and I think too with live action, as we were kind of discussing prior to this recording, the learning curve when it comes to doing a live action shoot is not as steep as when it comes to motion graphics, right?
Yeah, I would agree.
We all have, a video camera accessible to us, whether it's a webcam on our laptop or if it's, the camera on our mobile device, or maybe it is, something a little bit more higher end, maybe to the level of a GoPro or even up to a DSLR, or even just a camcorder, right? Like having access to a camera nowadays it's very, very common.
That's right.
Like super common, and also too, it's just common sense when it comes to cameras that it's pretty much you point the camera and you hit record. Mm-hmm. And nowadays, especially with like in the sales sense or even just in general, people are finding that that production value doesn't have to be, that Super Bowl-esque kind of quality, right? Yeah. They like that raw, they like that natural approach because it's relatable and you know, they can see themselves producing that type of content. And as I was saying, like, you just have to point the camera and shoot. And then with most, like, your phone has a basic, like, even your laptop, if you don't have any editing software whatsoever, which is pretty accessible for free, you know, like you get iMovie and whatnot, and even you can find free apps on your mobile device that can help.
Yeah.
But even outside of that, you can shoot a video even on your phone. So we both have iPhones. You can literally, you know, because obviously when you pull out your phone, you hit record and you're like, hi, oh, and maybe you stumbled a bit. Right. But you keep that recording going. You can even just trim it down and just, you know, do that top and tail, and then there you go. You have that good take right there.
Yeah, email it to yourself, and then you can post it a little. If you don't want to necessarily go through posting through your iPhone because the interface isn't the way you like it, you can do that just by sending it via email, put it up on a Google Drive folder, something like that, and then upload it.
Exactly, and a hacky way there too is like, all right, maybe you don't have an editing software to add some color grading. You know, a hacky way of doing it is upload it to, you know, your Instagram, slap on a filter or whatever apps out there that you're gonna slap on a filter that just gives it a little, you know, stylizes it a bit, and then you just download that stylized version. And I'm pretty sure with Instagram, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty certain that it even saves a version to your phone.
Yes, it does.
I know it does that with the photos, but I'm not exactly sure if it does with the videos.
It does it with the video, I'm pretty sure as well. Yep.
Regardless,
Way,
but it's a simplified way of doing it, right? Whereas with motion graphics, you know, that's where the learning curve is very steep, because you need the software that can generate, you know, those types of things, and not everyone is a designer or has, you know, the capabilities of, you know, creating graphics. And then that's one, but then two, having an understanding of the software. So, you know, a very popular one being After Effects. Have an understanding of the software itself. And then on top of that, understanding just the basics of animating and setting keyframes and how to, you know, make something look a little bit more smoother opposed to just something that's very linear in motion that just like bloop, just like appears on screen.
Text firing on screen. If you're not adding motion blur and you're not softening your intro and your outro to that animation, right? Yeah, there's layers to that.
So there's just a lot more at play.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, you know, a big win when it comes to the live action approach.
That's right. So like you said, yeah, it's definitely like the barrier to entry is a lot lower, which is great for live action video. And as you said as well, it's and it goes back to a previous comment, is that you can have kind of lower quality, so to speak, video, but as long as you have pretty solid audio, you know, people will still watch that video alongside the fact that you got to make sure that your content, what you're talking about in that video is good. If the content is good and people can hear what you're saying, for example, they're more likely to watch that video and forgive it if the video, the visuals itself, what they're looking at isn't as stellar as what maybe something else could be if you spent a little money on it. That's just kind of the nature of it, right? If there's more and more people just recording videos on the fly while they're walking and talking, and then, you know, or they're in an office space that's kind of dingy or dark or not as, you know, as professional looking as it could be. There's tons of people watching that kind of stuff. I mean, we have salespeople, and we communicate with salespeople quite a bit that just kind of record videos on the fly wherever they can. And it's not overly stellar looking video, but they're hitting you with a good piece of content from a context side, and that's what I think is going to pull people in. So you're absolutely right. So with the motion graphics side, there's definitely a lot more that's at play. You have to do a lot more research. You have to be doing a lot more YouTubing to be able to kind of teach yourself how to use that. There's the cost associated with getting into a lot of the animation software and diving in on that side. So yeah, it's kind of complicated. Either way, it's complicated to get yourself to the next levels, right, of being even kind of semi-professional or let alone professional. But yeah, definitely if you want to be entry level, start with live action and kind of work your way from there.
Yeah, and there's so many ways that you can use live action video too. You know, like, you know, there is, you know, doing, you know, a customer testimony or doing just an outreach or sharing a message. There's so many ways of doing it, you know. And then I guess, you know, you could be doing, even as you're talking about, you know, from, I guess, the motion graphic perspective of doing like a product video and whatnot, but even going to that level, which, you know, which we'll kind of talk on later, of like kind of the melding of the two. But even from a product demo or presentation, you know, there's a lot of tools out there that you can do a screen recording with, you know, yourself, like your webcam, recording your face as well. So you do have that kind of hybrid there.
Being able to kind of use...
But you're not, like I personally would not consider that motion graphics. Like if you're doing a screen recording, that is not motion graphics.
That's right.
But it does up the live action aspect of, because it's really hard to showcase a product unless it's like an actual physical device.
Again, if it's a piece of software, right? This is when something like this would come into handy. So this is a good plug for Vidyard Go Video. So you can download this free tool and then, like you said, use your webcam if you want to show yourself on camera or not. You can click that on or off. But like you said, you can go through a piece of software on your computer and do a video recording of that and walk somebody through the steps and processes of your product that is an online tool or a piece of computer software. So,
and as we both know, and I'm sure all our viewers know, like very popular videos that are on YouTube and whatnot are unboxing videos, right? And again, that's live action, and with those types of videos, like I watch them all the time because you want to see, before you go and buy something, a piece of hardware or whatever it be, you do your research. Well, at least I do, and I know you do. And they're just popular videos where people like to see other people unbox and kind of see what it looks like and what they're getting out of it.
How cheap things feel. I think that's obviously people find that more and more of an issue as things are more and more mass produced, right? It's like I remember my mom always being like, every time we got a new barbecue after our original one, which was like a tank, right? She was like, this thing is a piece of garbage. It's only lasting 3 years and then it rusts out and it falls apart, blah, blah, blah. Nothing's made like it was before. So this is kind of like bringing the trust factor back, as if you find somebody that you really are into on YouTube, for example, that has a channel that reviews products, and you feel like you can trust their integrity because they go through all of the different features and functions of a product and they tell you kind of how it feels, right? How does it feel? Like what's the experience of using it and working with it? Oftentimes it's influenced my decision to be like, oh, like if I wanted a new pair of headphones, it's like if these feel like rubbish, or if like the person's like these fall out of my ears, or like I don't like the way the cable is, it's too stiff, or this tangles too much. I'm not going to get those because I'm going to go with the one that like they kind of talked about a little bit more, regardless of price. Often, I think that's kind of important too. Is that you can influence people to spend more money indirectly by just kind of like talking about the features, whether or not it's more or less money, right? So sometimes it can be like, this is a great product, but I don't like this and this and this, and it influences people to sometimes even spend less money.
Well, and even at the same time too, like if it's a very like mainstream item, so for example, it's the latest iPhone, you're going to see those highly produced unboxing review type videos, but maybe it's something that's a little bit more niche. I don't have a specific example, but I've seen a lot of videos that it's not, doesn't have a broader audience, and so the people, there's fewer videos of that type on YouTube or on the internet, and the people who are making those videos may not be, at that scale, and it's literally them with their cell phone camera and they're behind it and they have it right in front of them, or maybe they're even holding the camera with one hand and doing it with the other hand. But it doesn't bother me because I am watching that content purely to see, what I'm getting, like how big is it, whatever. Just, just getting, that insight on what that piece of hardware, whatever it is, what it looks like, how big it is, how flimsy or whatever it be, and I don't care about the video quality as long as I'm getting the information that I want out of it.
That's a perk of live action, right? You get to experience that. Yeah.
So, do you have any other pros you think in regards to live action?
I had one that there's one that you just mentioned, and it might come back up. Obviously. It's more of a con, so I'm gonna wait on it.
You're gonna wait on it?
There's lots of pros, of course, but those are kind of like some of the top ones in terms of live action video. I would consider it at times, depending on the complexity of the video you want to produce. Sometimes it could be, this is kind of like a teetering scale, but oftentimes, what we produce is like, I feel like it's cheaper for us to produce live action video than it is to produce motion graphics in terms of who necessarily needs to be involved. Like I can go and shoot a live action video at our workplace, and I could do sometimes a lot of it on my own, right? Set up all the lights, set up the camera, go run and do it. And there's a cost associated obviously with my wage, but I think it pales in contrast to the amount of workload it takes to have you often have to consult with the graphic design team, get 1 or 2 people working on some of that content, and the design team gives you a bunch of materials and assets that then you have to go and then bring to life. Exactly. And then, so I feel like there's a lot more steps involved in producing a motion graphics video at times, right? And there's also ways to kind of go around that too, right? It's like if you don't have that ability to shoot your own live action video, I mean, sometimes there's a cost-effective, or it can be cost-effective maybe if you find a good package of stock video. Sometimes stock video isn't cheap though either. So sometimes you can go like a stock video pieces and find that it's, for a 1080p or 4K piece of video, it's gonna cost you sometimes just as much as an entire package of motion graphics, like a template for motion graphics. And if you have a template for motion graphics, maybe you can make your entire video motion graphics based out of that one template that costs the same amount as one piece of stock video sometimes. Again, it's like that kind of like flippy floppy scale. So it just depends on the type of video you're wanting to make and how that kind of works out. So, but on average, I think with us, I feel like there's more work going into making the motion graphics than there often is going into the live action in terms of people working on it.
And it's funny that you say that, because I was actually talking with a program coordinator at a local college here. He's one of the program coordinators for graphic design at the local college here. And he was actually talking to me about actually introducing motion graphics into the curriculum or the course for the design students, because just given the direction and how video is just becoming this more and more popular medium that everyone wants, introducing this program of After Effects and applying those students to take their knowledge in graphic design and applying it in motion. Now, there's principles to design and there's the principles to animation, and so there's a lot there. So to bring those two together, it's easier said than done, because I have a lot of experience doing motion graphics and whatnot, but I wouldn't say I'm a graphic designer. And so that's why I always like to look to our graphic designers for their input, and it's the same for them. When they're making the designs, they're always asking me, well, how are we going to get from this said keyframe to the next keyframe? And I say to them, don't worry about it, I'll make it happen, because a lot of the times it just comes when you're just playing around with the designs and you're just playing with the different ways that you can transition and all the different effects and whatnot.
You're able to talk from both sides. You're able to talk to design. They can tell you the possibilities and limitations. Oftentimes I find like more of the possibilities and limitations are on our side in terms of what we're able to do with some of the design sometimes, or what's actually going to be possible within timelines often too, right?
Now obviously with live action too, like if you're going grander, like bigger scale, like so you got a budget of $15,000 and you're making like a top of funnel like campaign, like hero-esque video, then in that case for live action there is a crew, so it's not just one person goes out and does it, because then you generally have your person doing audio, you have your cameraman, you have the director, but based off the the circumstances and situation that we're kind of talking, we're thinking more like that smaller team, 1 to 2 people, who are going on and producing those videos.
So kind of, I guess probably to flip the question back at you, what would you say are some of the pros of motion graphics as like a whole, if you had to like give like a bulleted list?
So you want to jump ship and talk about pros for motion graphics?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a big thing that really stands out to me as a pro for motion graphics, well, it's going to be the first thing that we can kind of riff on, is actually, so I used to manage, I was a creative director for a production company, and we did strictly motion graphic videos. And the big win for that was we were able to work with clients, and we were a very small team. It was me, a graphic designer, and a contract animator. And and it eventually just came down to myself and the graphic designer. But what was great about them was, what was working was that we were able to work across the world. We had clients from Africa, India, Taiwan, from the States, and so on.
All over the place.
All over the place,
so
right?
You're able to work remotely.
And that's exactly it. We were able to work remotely and not have to, you know, depend on finding a freelancer or someone who, you know, who is local to our clients and, you know, have to shoot them, whether, obviously depending what the content was. Most of the pieces that we're making were explainer videos, explaining, and they were mostly tech-based companies, but it's explaining what their product did. But yeah, in that situation, we didn't have to rely on outsourcing a videographer to go and record the client, or flying ourselves to said client and doing that thing. It was, all our meetings were, you know, Zoom or Skype based, or GoToMeeting. I can't remember the exact tool we were using at the time, and they were just over phone calls, and it was just like, here, review the script, here, review the designs or the storyboards, then review the designs, and then we'd roll into the actual animation and review those. And then at the end of the day, even if we were working remotely as a team, so like I said, we had a contract worker, sharing, because we had like a traditional like character style animator, and she was based out of England. So for her to send us those animations of the characters, the file sizes were nothing more than a gig, right? So it's very easy to share files to remote workers, and it was just very efficient that way.
Right. So yeah, that's definitely a good point. Is that like for motion graphics, oftentimes the file size is going to be much smaller than the live action video, right? So like we shoot some 4K stuff, and like I do like a 2-hour shoot or whatever, or maybe a little bit more, but like when I throw it in the SD cards in my computer, I can have 60 or 80 gigabytes worth of footage from like one shoot. Well, that's not really fun to be like transferring.
Now say you have you're working remotely with an editor, right? Or you hire a freelance shooter, and they shoot that and they need to send it back to you. Yeah, it's not ideal, because now you have to download, like you said, 80 gigs worth of video, or could even
ship them a hard drive.
Or ship them a hard drive, yes, that's another way of doing it. But again, it's not the most efficient route, right?
No, that's for sure.
Because next thing you know, what if that hard drive gets lost? Hopefully the videographer that you hire is smart enough and didn't delete the footage on their end and has a backup at least.
But that all takes more time, right? So it's not as efficient and as fluid, I find, as, if you're living in this imaginary space, being a motion graphics world, right? Where you're building out this entire thing from scratch and animating it all to come to life, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, and also, so that is more, I guess, that situation, or that point, I think is obviously more for a client-based. But there are, businesses out there that do have small video teams, but are pretty big businesses and have multiple offices or divisions scattered, whether it's in the same country or not. Another point that I would say that is a benefit is really, doing motion graphics to explain. So I guess use that segue of what I used to do with making explainer videos is, so say you have a concept of a product or something like that that isn't maybe done. It's still, being built or whatever it be.
It's still in the concept phase.
Yeah, exactly. And you need to pitch that concept and explain exactly what your product does or whatever it is does. You can use motion graphics, because with motion graphics, the sky's the limit. With the sky's the limit, you can use anything and everything to help visualize and help demonstrate what it is you do. Whether it's using, actual illustrated characters that shows diversity or whatever it be, using said tool, or it could be kind of more conceptual, and it's like, I don't know, I don't have an exact concept in mind, but it allows you to kind of think outside the box and really help drive home the pain that your product would be resolving.
Right. So take for instance like a piece of machinery, right? So it might be a little bit easier to be able to, even software would fall in the same bucket, but say you have a piece of machinery and you want to highlight the the kind of the perks and features of that. It can be a lot to look at if you're looking at it in live action sometimes. So maybe depending on how that piece of machinery works, it's easier to kind of hone in on those fine details of the mechanics, close up on things, and have supporting text mixed with voiceover or something like that. And like you can animate things a certain way to kind of simplify things, right? So you're getting rid of the clutter essentially, right? Which you can more easily do, I find, with motion graphics. You can strip away at all the things that you'd otherwise have to look at sometimes with live action, pull away at those elements, and then just hone in on the things that matter the most. And the same thing falls for software, I guess, too. So if you have a piece of software or whatever that you're doing a video for, you know, you can look at an entire screen, right? But the power within motion graphics is that you can kind of scale up on that thing that somebody is supposed to look at within that video. Isolate it, yeah, and then kind of just highlight that as the feature that they're supposed to, you know, you're directing their eye to that specific thing, right? As opposed to kind of looking at this cluttered, because I know I look at some pieces of software, even the software that we use, if you're new to it, when it comes to Premiere or After Effects from Adobe, if you're new to it and you look at it, you can kind of get lost in all the buttons and functions and tabs and things like that. But if you're watching an instructional, the best instructionals are the ones that kind of like break things down and highlight and zoom in and kind of show you what each little piece does bit by bit, as opposed to just being like, this is the editor, like jump in, and you're kind of like, huh? Like, so I find that's where motion graphics can really kind of jump in and help with that kind of stuff. Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense.
And then another use case, which is great for motion graphics to help visualize things, is, and we do it quite a bit here, is you know, making a video that's highlighting stats or you know, talking about numbers, and just, you know, you can, because looking at numbers and stats and whatnot, it can be a little dry. But, you know, with motion graphics, and as I kind of touched on before, like the sky's the limit, and you can, you know, get creative and you know, do things outside of the box, and it just helps you kind of visualize and, you know.
Yeah. You can make things pretty punchy, right? Yeah. So suddenly it's like, I find that like sometimes stats that are said by a person live action are like, okay, they can sometimes fall off if you kind of like start to lose track of what that person's being said. But if that, instead of being a person, sometimes you see a stat on screen, which is what we do, right? So sometimes it's like if I have a video that I have to do live action, I'll cut to a slate with text on there, or we'll do some kind of funky animation when we have to show numbers and things like that. Because when you visualize a number and you see something on screen and you do that cut to, it burns it more into somebody's head, and it sticks with them because you're seeing that number, whether it's big, small, whatever, that impact, you drive it home a little bit better by showing it on screen for a split second. The more entertaining you make that as well, the better it sticks, the better it resonates, right? So that's where motion graphics can be a real winner, right? I think that's huge. So yeah, I think that's a big factor. Not to mention I mean, if you can build in, I think another perk for motion graphics would be like keeping things on brand. Right? It's a little bit harder. You have to do a little bit more legwork to take live action video and put things on brand without it kind of feeling overly forced. Yeah. You know what I mean? We sometimes like to produce live action videos where we have people in our branded shirts or something like that. But sometimes I feel like we want to go against that because sometimes we feel it's too much, and we don't want that person to just identify as a number within the organization. Sometimes we want that person to be a living, breathing human. Therefore, they're not directly just being stamped all over with our brand and colors, right? I feel like you can get away with more of that brand stamp and color and logo and all that kind of feeling within motion graphics, right?
Because you know, exactly. Because you can use brand colors, fonts, and then logos,
and
all that type of stuff, and then and you know, whether you know exactly that imagery, so icons and whatnot that's maybe used on your website and whatnot can be carried over into these, or even just the style alone can be carried over into your motion graphic videos. So when people do see that, they will, you know, have that quicker connection, being like, oh, this is said brand.
Yep. I think kind of actually the flip side to this, and this is kind of top of mind, so I don't want to lose it, because otherwise I feel if we carry on I might lose it. But I think I'm kind of like working against the thing that I love to do most, which is live action. So I'm like giving you, I was like, here's more work for you, Blake. No, I'm kidding. Like getting myself out of a job. No, I'm kidding. But it would be, oh my God, I almost lost it. I'm bringing it back. Oh, it would be if you wanted to make things a little bit more generic. Maybe you had to produce video and it couldn't be as branded as you wanted.
Yeah.
And you didn't necessarily want to, maybe you didn't have the budget in the world to shoot a live action video, let alone hire somebody and bring somebody in to be an actor. Therefore, there's no identifying character from your organization. So, because you don't want to show somebody that's like, oh, that person works at that company. Like, this is a little biased or whatever. You're allowed to remove that bias per se by having people related to business by producing a motion graphics video that's unbranded, right? And so then the world becomes your oyster in terms of colors, fonts, to make things as identifiable as you want with some specific brand, or not identifiable at all and as generic as possible, right? So there's perks and benefits for each side, right? Which is kind of cool. You're able to do that better and cheaper, I find, in the motion graphics world versus with live action.
Yeah, and you touched on it when we were kind of talking about the pros about live action, but the benefit also too with motion graphics and buying a template. There's so many templates out there that are, if not, they're the same price, if not cheaper than say buying a nice scenic shot at 4K resolution.
Could cost you several hundred dollars.
Yeah, or more. Yeah, some stock footage I've seen out there, but also at the same time, stock footage also has that kind of that look to it that it's like, that looks like stock footage.
That stock look,
right?
I don't know what it is.
And then it's like, so say you shot something on your iPhone and then you cut the stock footage, like, you got to be careful with it, right? Because at times it will clash.
Mixing your media.
Exactly.
Right?
But buying the template, now obviously buying a template you need to have the software. So I guess that's a negative right there, is you need the software to support the template.
Right. Yeah, you need to know what you're doing with that.
But if you do have the software that does support the template makes it super simple. It allows you, it pretty much is the video already made, but it has placeholders for you to adjust the text and change it to whatever you want it to say. Has placeholders to add images or even video.
Add your logo or not.
Exactly, and it has all the dynamic, motions and transitions and all those other elements already baked in. It's just that you have to apply the information and visuals within those placeholders. And if you do have because we've done it, if you do have a better understanding of the software, After Effects, then you can kind of take a little bit more liberties, and then that template acts as a foundation. Totally. So maybe you want that style, maybe it's the pace, or there's something about it that you like, but it's like, you know what, I'm gonna change all these colors. I'm gonna, really kind of dismantle this video and add our own flair on top of it. It works well because, in some situations, timelines can be pretty tight. And so rather than, reflecting or, working with the design team, like, hey, we need to come up with designs and storyboard and whatnot. It's like, all right, let's take this template, let's add our brand colors, let's change the font to match our brand's font, And
oftentimes it looks like a product that a company would make.
Exactly, and it's like, even if you kind of strip it down to just simplify it, so it's like, maybe it doesn't have all the bells and whistles that, design would want in association to the brand, but just even those, simpler things, being color and changing the font, that just helps, tie it back to the brand, could be enough.
It's a sacrifice of a little bit of the control for a major gain in terms of efficiency and timeline, like you said, right? And it often doesn't come at too much of a cost. So it's a really good solution if you don't have time on your side. Obviously, the best case scenario is that you have full control to make the animation the way you want it, with the graphic designers to support you with all the assets you possibly need to build it out from scratch. But like you said, sometimes you just don't have that time, and that's where that comes into effect. I find like that's a little bit more. That's easier to digest than watching a video that's chock full of stock footage. Nothing bums me out more than going to like sometimes a sizable company's website. Like, they're a pretty established company, and then you look at the video that's on their landing page and it's full of stock stuff, and you go like, are you kidding me? Like, come on. Like, you can throw a little bit more budget at this thing. This is like your main landing page video. This is your hero video. This is like, oftentimes for a lot of these companies, this is kind of the first touch or secondary touch for somebody interested who's looking at their product kind of thing, and that's what you're throwing at them, right? Yeah. There's no heart there suddenly, right? Yeah. So yeah, it's tricky, that's for sure.
Yeah. And now this isn't the bash stock footage podcast.
No.
Like there's obviously, you know, like we use stock footage, and there's always a time and place for stock footage because, you know, there's times where you don't have access. Recently we just did a video or it was an intro to a video, and we needed a shot of San Diego because it was the event that this content was associated with was based in San Diego, right. And we're not based in San Diego.
We're in Canada.
So we needed that footage, or, you know, maybe you needed footage of an erupting volcano, and where are you gonna get that, right? So, not to, you know, go down this rabbit hole of stock footage and whatnot, but there obviously is, you know, a time and place for stock footage, but at the same time, you don't want to get carried away with it.
That's right. So, kind of moving past that, we obviously talked about the pros of each.
Yeah.
Right? So.
And there's a little bit of negatives.
Well, it's important. I think it's important to kind of highlight the positives and the negs a little bit there. Yeah. But where would you kind of say where these two elements come together to make a little bit of movie magic themselves, you know, combining the two?
Yeah, so we kind of riffed on it during the live action portion, where it's, you know, a product explainer video and you're showcasing a product. But maybe this video is, you know, something a little bit more polished, and you want this to, you know, live on your homepage, on your website, or, you know, be on your YouTube channel. Something that's a little bit more, you know, appealing to the broader audience, that really just showcases the product and what it looks like, but at the same time still has that human aspect of it. And it is that, you know, product-esque video where you have somebody maybe sitting at a desk, you know, interacting with a laptop or interacting with said device, and then you cut to maybe, you know, an over-the-shoulder where it's like you now see that said product on screen, and then now you cut to full screen, and now the footage is, you know, been, you know, designed in a way that fits the story of that video. So now that said character, who is the talking head, who's now, you know, driving the dialogue in this said product video, is, you know, the person that's sending said email, that's going through this said technology and whatnot. And yeah, and you use design and motion graphics to, you know, do the camera movements, or, you know, really take high res, super clean, and even to your point of stripping back some of that, you know, clutter, and just really focusing in on the specific thing you want to highlight, you know, or it can even be done in a more conceptual way, which we've done, where we have the talking head, you know, talking about said product. But what we did is we shot them in front of a white background, and we used that white background throughout, and it allowed us to seamlessly work with our live action, and then, you know, have the motion graphics come in, and it just allowed us to, you know, meld the two together and make the video a little bit more dynamic.
Right. So you're talking about in the sense of, like, yeah, we use we use the white space around our subject, who we use to build a little bit of brand identity and, you know, humanize our video. Yeah. We melded that with showing off pieces of our software, our product, which is a piece of software effectively that you use on your computer. But then we stripped it down, right? We went to the design team, we stripped down some of the elements so you're not looking at the whole tool in itself, right? So we had a multi-video series that broke down each element of our product. But then you, like you said, declutter. So you highlight, you know, very specific things so they can pop up and animate on screen beside that subject while they're talking about it, right? So that you're very focused in on specifically that item, as opposed to looking at the grander thing all at one time where you get a little lost. And that's super effective.
And another great example too is, like, when you have somebody on screen and it's more educational based content, and they're, you know, it's like a thought leader piece and they're talking, and it kind of riffs off the whole stats, where, you know, with motion graphics you have, you know, you want to highlight that stat. It's the same. You could have, you know, your subject on camera, talking to the camera, and maybe, you know, they're talking about those stats. 25% of blah, blah, blah are more successful based off of our tool. And, you know, you could have that person talking to the camera, and then, maybe you could just have the graphic itself depending on what your background is, because obviously whatever your background is, you don't want it to be
Blending.
yeah, and just hard. You got to work with visibility as well. But you can have like, what we do a lot is just have like a solid kind of come in and take up a third of the screen, and then the person moves over with it, and then and as they're listing off like kind of steps, tips, whatever it be, those bullets come in bullet form, and it just makes a list. So then the viewer, as they're hearing, and the other thing too, to really kind of drive home the messages, rather than having them all animate at the same time, is as each one's listed, it animates on. So it's like, okay, this is obviously affiliated with that point. So again, it has that human connection, but two, it really helps highlight key messages. Because as you mentioned, right, sometimes when it's just talking, it doesn't, resonate or doesn't, sink in as much.
So yeah, if you had that accented kind of dynamic field at play with the motion graphics elements helping to reinforce the point, that's kind of like that great harmonious marriage of the two elements of live action and motion graphics kind of coming together. And that's why we work so well. So we try to make those things kind of come together.
Yeah, and then and another thing too is, and that's more like melding the two together, but it could be something a little bit more simple as brand identity and whatnot. So it could be, even from the stance of like it's a testimonial.
Yep.
Or maybe it's just a talking head video.
Yeah.
You could have a stinger. I don't know what another way to describe a stinger, an intro, bumpers. There's various terms. It's an intro and outro, which is like basically 5 seconds long. That So if you had an intro, it would be whatever the title of the series is, whatever that content is, you'd have the title. Or if it's an outro, it could just literally be company logo. But anyways, whatever it is, you could have that at the beginning of the video. It transitions to now your said talent talking, and then you want to identify who this person is, so then you insert a lower third. You could do something as simple as just doing a text overlay where it's just white text or whatever color it is, that highlights their name and their job title and what company they're at. But if you really want to drive home the brand, you could do something a little bit more, where maybe it is the icon, and that's where like a solid animates out, and then on that solid, that's where you put the name. So
what's a solid for people that don't know what a solid is?
Well, a solid is just like a solid color.
Yes, a colored band.
Yeah.
In some shape or other.
Yeah, exactly, and basically just upping the name key or the lower third, so it just, again, ties back to the brand. So whether it's with the visual elements being logos, icons, or whether it's just using, color and font.
That's a very simplistic way of doing it too, right? So you don't have to go over the top. And I think that's important to note. I think that's probably one of the last things probably to do with the harmonious balance between the two coming together is you can also do too much, right? You can make things a little bit too much. If you have a live action video and you just throw stuff on the screen and make it kind of wild, right? And you put a little too much animation in there, right? It's this kind of delicate balance. Right, it can be very jarring, it can be distracting. It's you want to do it so that it's complementing your live action as opposed to overtaking and kind of competing with what the context is or what's being said on camera, right? So I definitely think it's just this fine balance that you can overdo it. And that just comes from fine review and practice, right? If you're new to it, get the practice in, try things out, maybe it's best to understate things a little bit, and then going into your next one, kind of bump up one side or another a little bit more. Maybe you do a little bit more animation in the next one, a little bit more motion graphics, and then you can kind of find that nice balance that works for your brand and your business kind of thing, right? Last thing you want to do is necessarily go firing on all cylinders. It's the same thing, it's everybody jokes with PowerPoint or doing a slide deck, and every slide you wipe out when you transition to the next slide, you do your star wipe or your circle wipe or a page peel. Nobody wants to see that anymore, right? So it's everything is kind of this fine balance of what you're animating on.
You obviously don't want it to come out too cheesy, so you got to be tasteful with that type of stuff, right?
Yes, and obviously it's super exciting when you're first starting out to kind of go gung-ho and fire on all cylinders, but then the real professionalism comes from being able to dial that back and know when to add something in, or when it's too much. So.
Yeah, because that could even just be applied from a live action when you're just editing, and it's just all right, I'm just gonna cross fade to, or cross dissolve to the next shot because there's a cut here. And maybe it's best just to leave the hard cut there, but people just almost feel obligated where they have to put a transition. But at the end of the day, it doesn't.
Yeah, you'll see that, right? Yeah, you'll see that somebody's an amateur videographer, or maybe they want to make like a home video or something, and they don't know. Maybe they made a short movie or whatever. Right? And so when you're first starting out, it's like, okay, you didn't really have a good bridge to get from this scene to the next scene, and you don't really have a good connecting kind of way of getting from finishing off one scene and kind of introing another. So it's like, if I just fade it, then it's like the cross dissolve to me in video a lot of the times is like, time has passed, and now we're coming into this scene, and then the next scene starts, right? It's like, and that's why I'm very much a fan of doing like kind of smart cuts, or like, you know, using sliding motion on my camera to kind of go off of like objects within the frame and sliding behind those and sliding into my next scene if I'm doing something a little bit more artsy, because it's like a kind of a cool transition without it being like a fade. But otherwise I like rely on hard cuts, because if I can do hard cuts and have my subject make sense, like the entire video makes sense, it means that, like, you know, the context was there, so that I didn't need to do some funny fade or fade to black. That's like the ones that you'll see in like school with kids, right? Is that they don't know how to end a scene when they're making their short video, so they fade to black, and then it just fades up to the next day, right? Like, you know, but you're learning, right? So ideally, it's like use those sparingly, if at all, kind of thing, right? So everything's done with taste and balance. So it's better to err on the side of caution, right?
Yep. So I honestly think that's everything really that we can say about, you know, live action versus motion graphics. Like there's so many ways that you can use each form in regards to producing video, and at the same time, there's so many ways that you can meld the two together. So don't obviously look at live action versus motion graphics.
Even though we pose it kind of that way.
We kind of pose it that way, but just be smart, be tasteful, and kind of determine based off of your experience, your level of you know, just what you have, and just kind of base it off that, and also what type of content that you're trying to produce. So I guess on that note, try live action, try some motion graphics. You know, maybe dabble and maybe put the two together.
Find which one is best for you in your business.
Yeah, or excel in one and find your Matt, and they can be your video person,
and then find yourself a Blake. We're just complimenting each other all the time. You're great.
You're great. You're great.
And this is where we gotta end it. Cut. All right. See you guys.
Toodaloo.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching this episode of the Video Island podcast, brought to you by Vidyard. You can subscribe to the audio version on your favorite podcast platform, or check out more videos here.